Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we're recording?
hmm
Okay, great. Welcome to PSY 3040. This is animal behavior in the second summer session. This portion of the video is going to be, of this discussion, is designed to basically give you a sense of what this class is about and what's required, what's expected, what we expect of you as students, but also what you can expect of us as instructors, as co-instructors. I should first, so we'll go through the syllabus, which has been posted to the Moodle webpage, the Moodle course page, and we'll sort of we'll address and deal with a lot of the details that we likely won't come back to. If there are questions or concerns, please contact either one of us, either Gavin or myself. Before I say anything further, let me point out that this class is co-instructed, so Gavin and I will serve as your co-instructors. My name is Todd Shackelford. I'm the chair of the Department of Psychology and have been at Oakland University since 2010. Was hired in 2010 to serve as chair of the department and to build graduate programs in psychology. At that point, when I arrived in 2010, there were no graduate programs, and within a couple of years, we hired in 6 new faculty members and built graduate programs, a master's program, and also a PhD program. And those launched in 2012. And they've been extremely successful. We've graduated, I think, somewhere around 18 PhD students. And they've all, with very few, they've all gone on into very excellent jobs. Most of them in academia, so most have gone straight into professorships. Some have gone into private industry in research and design. But at any rate, it's been very successful. And we currently have, I think, somewhere around 25 PhD students in the program, and somewhere around 55 master students. We've graduated to this point since 2012. We've graduated about 60 master students. So it's not a huge program, but it's not a tiny program either. So in total, I think we have somewhere around 80 graduate students, somewhere in that vicinity. But at any rate, my training is in the field of evolutionary psychology. This is basically the application of Darwinian principles to understanding the way the mind works and why the mind appears to be designed in the way that it is. We will talk about natural selection. We'll talk about evolution throughout this course. The course is on animal behavior, and so we will be addressing, we will address humans. I mean, humans are animals, but we'll also address many other species. We're not going to go through the entire syllabus, but I will point out that animal behavior, as you can read on your syllabus in the course description, I mean, it's been given a variety of different names. It's been referred to as animal behavior, which is the title for this course that we have here. Also, it's sometimes referred to as comparative psychology or comparative animal behavior. Very closely related areas are areas that are sometimes called animal cognition or comparative animal cognition. So basically what this class is it casts a very wide net on animal behavior, which includes humans, with a focus on, at some level, on psychology in terms of information processing, but with an equal amount of attention on the behavior that's produced by those by that psychology. And throughout the course, there is a clear sort of discussion and a clear focus on evolution by natural selection as the only known cause of complex apparent design. What I mean is when something looks designed, but it's not. So something like the eye, for example. It looks for all the world as if it's been designed. And in fact, that was the leading explanation before Darwin, before he published his book in 1859. The leading explanation was certainly that, well, God designed the eye. Typically, it was the Christian God, but that was the explanation. How did the eye, how is it that it's so apparently perfectly well suited for vision? Well, without any other explanation, people attributed it to God. I mean, it's evidence of God. And so much of the history of biology up until Darwin was the study of animals, including humans, but the study of animals and plants and all life as a window into God's mind, as a window into how God operated. And so the presumption was, if you see something that appears to be designed, well, it is designed, and it was designed by God. But what Darwin did is he provided a non-supernatural explanation for apparent design. What Richard Dawkins, the author of your first book for this class, what he calls designoid. So this would be a trait or a feature of an animal that appears designed, but it's not actually designed. I mean, natural selection is a process. There's no natural selector. I mean, there is no being or agent that's doing this selection. And so therefore, Dawkins distinguishes design from what he calls designoid. This is apparent design. So all of this we'll get to, and I don't want to sort of say much more than that. But again, by way of introduction, the class is the study of animal behavior, which includes humans, but we will make a focused effort to talk about non-humans from an evolutionary perspective. That is, from the perspective that recognizes the fact of evolution by natural selection as the only known scientific cause of apparent design. Now, looking at your syllabus, so I mentioned that I've been at Oakland for 10 years, and I've taught this course here many times. I really enjoy the class. I think it's a lot of fun. Students tend to really enjoy it. I will say that we don't presume that you have any background knowledge in evolution by natural selection, or that you have any background knowledge in animal behavior. I mean, this is intended as a survey sort of course that casts a very wide net on the field and gives you a sense of what's in this field. The best way to contact me, looking at your syllabus, for sure the best way to contact me is by email, and I've listed my email on the syllabus. My phone number, I mean, I'm rarely in the office, given that Oakland is officially still shut down due to the coronavirus. I'm occasionally in the office, but not very frequently. And so, for sure the best way, the most quickest way to get in touch with me is by email. But let me say a couple of other things about my own research and background, and then I'll ask Gavin to do something similar. I did my undergraduate work at the University of New Mexico. I was there from 1989 to 1993. Like many of you students in the class, I was responsible for basically figuring out how to cover the cost of college education. And so I ended up getting a pretty good scholarship at the University of New Mexico. And as far as I was concerned, that was not Oklahoma, where I grew up. I grew up in Tulsa, which has just recently been in the news with Trump's recent visit there. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in a very conservative environment, very religious environment. And I'm sure I must have heard of Darwin and evolution, but I think mostly as sort of the mouthpiece of Satan sort of stuff. And so really my first introduction to evolution by natural selection was when I went to college. And there I took an honors psychology course where the professor actually had us read some of the original writings from people like Freud and Skinner. And to his credit, he actually assigned some of Darwin's book, Origins on the Origin of Species. And I mean, I just thought it made just incredible sense. Right from the get-go. And, when I learned that you can apply this kind of thinking to humans and to human psychology in particular, I haven't looked back since. And so that was, I think, my when I was a sophomore in college. So I knew what I wanted to do. And so at that time, evolutionary psychology, which is the field that my PhD is in, it was very there weren't a lot of places where you can go and study it. But I applied to, I think, all 6 places in the United States and Canada where you could study evolutionary psychology and get a PhD. And ultimately, I decided to go to the University of Michigan, where David Buss was a faculty member, and he's one of the founders of the field. And I was there for 3 years at the University of Michigan. This was after 4 years at New Mexico. And then my advisor, David Buss, moved to the University of Texas at Austin. And so I actually spent 3 years at Michigan and then moved to Texas and then spent the next 10 months basically writing my dissertation, sort of. I mean, I didn't spend that long actually writing it. I'd actually already published some work. But I ended up only spending 10 months in Austin. I took enough courses to satisfy the requirements for a PhD there. So my master's is from Michigan. My PhD is from Texas. I finished my PhD in 1997. I took my first job at Florida Atlantic University, which is one of the state universities in Florida. I was there for 13 years. It's in South Florida. And then this opportunity came up in 2010 to chair the Department of Psychology at Oakland University. And of course, I was familiar with Oakland, having been at the University of Michigan. So I knew about Oakland. I knew it was an up-and-coming place. And it was a very exciting opportunity. And I've really enjoyed it. It's given me an opportunity to work with really excellent students like Gavin, our co-instructor. And let's see, what else can I tell you? Most of my research has focused on sexual conflict or conflict between the sexes, including violent conflict, so domestic violence and intimate partner homicide, but also spousal rape and partner rape. And so generally, I think most of my work focuses on sort of the less, sort of the unseemly, sort of underside of the darker side of life. That's what I find most intriguing. I do not do work on happiness or love or caring or any of those topics, which really don't interest me all that much, such as it is. But I won't say anything yet about the books because I'd like to give Gavin a chance to say a little bit about his background, maybe say a few words on this class, and I don't know, Gavin, did you formally take animal behavior as an undergraduate?
I don't think U of M Flint offered an animal behavior course within the psychology program. I didn't take one.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah, I don't think I did either, come to think of it. I can't. Maybe I did towards the end when I was at Texas. That's weird. I can't remember either. But at any rate, so why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
So yeah, following sort of a similar trajectory, I stumbled into evolutionary psychology initially, like late high school when I was taking AP Psych, and found it really interesting from the get-go, but had a very cursory knowledge of it at that point. And then fortunately, just kind of by happenstance, I went to U of M Flint mostly because it was convenient, close to where I live. And then when I learned while going to U of M Flint that there was a faculty member there who specialized in evolutionary psychology, I of course tried to work with him. He was on sabbatical at the time, so like a semester or two later, I ended up getting in touch with him. And I worked with Bill McKibben, who is the evolutionary psychologist at U of M Flint. And he had actually worked under Todd, or Dr. Shackelford, at Florida Atlantic before they both moved up to Michigan. And I think it was the same year, correct?
It was, yeah. So Bill McKibben was my last PhD student at Florida Atlantic University. He got his PhD, then moved up here, and I moved up. It wasn't, 6 weeks later.
So, and then fortunately, Bill McKibben was able to turn me on to Dr. Shackelford's work, and then I learned that, he was working here at Oakland and was taking on master's and PhD students the year that I was applying to master's and graduate programs, essentially, the year I graduated from U of M Flint. So that's how I ended up here. And then shortly after enrolling here at Oakland, started developing sort of my main interests as a graduate student. And currently I'm mostly interested in two sort of basic ideas. One being men's sort of interest in pornography, or looking at trends in men's interest in pornography, to sort of use that as a sense of what their underlying evolved psychology is, like their mating psychology, and also looking at women's psychological and physiological adaptations to guard against rape. So those are my two broad sort of interests at this time. So very much in line with a lot of the work that Dr. Shackelford has done in the past.
Great, and if it makes sense, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about some of the work that you're doing in your graduate studies, because it's really interesting work, and I think our students might be interested to hear a little bit about it. If we can sort of, I think we can, if we can, integrate it into the material as we go through the course.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, great. And would you say, Gavin, that the best way to get in touch with you also is by email? Actually, that's the only way they can get in touch with you.
Yeah.
I really shouldn't even have my phone number on there because actually I've rigged it up so that any voicemails are sent to me as an email message. But it just means that there's a delay. And so this is an online class. It was originally scheduled as an in-person class, but clearly, obviously because of the coronavirus, we made the decision to move it to online. I think it was a good decision at this point because we would have had to do that eventually. So everything's online. I mean, if you need to get in touch with us, send us an email. Both Gavin and I are happy to, respond over email. We're also happy to have conversations by Skype or whatever, sort of platform you prefer. We recognize that an important part of our job is to be accessible and to be available to answer your questions and your concerns. And, from our perspective, it's not, well, I guess I'll only speak for myself, although I suspect this is true for Gavin as well. It's not at all, I don't find it irritating at all or bothersome when students contact me. I actually take it as a positive sign because it means that you're interested and you have questions and concerns, and even if it's complaints, still that's a level of interest that not all students have. And so I've come to really appreciate student engagement, and and when students reach out, I appreciate it. I don't find it irritating. I don't find it cumbersome. I think it's an important part of my job, and I think is that fair to should I say I'm speaking for you too as well, Gavin?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay. You will find that Gavin and I are incredibly responsive by email. We will get back to you as soon as possible, if only to tell you that we're working on, whatever question you had. But that's always that's for the longest time been a great pet peeve of mine, is when people don't respond. You ask them something and then you never hear back, or some period of time passes and you don't know, did they get the message? Are they thinking about it? Did it get lost in the shuffle? And so we will always respond quickly, if only to say, got your message, but we'll get back to you. Okay, so let's look at the syllabus then. So I'm looking at the syllabus, and okay, this, you can read the course description, but let me just note that, the topic of animal behavior is huge. It's huge. It includes all the various ways in which animals behave, most of which are designed in some way, or appear to be designed, to increase the probability of surviving or to increase the probability of reproducing, again, from an evolutionary perspective. And so we'll touch on topics like, looking at the course description, reproduction, aggression, a whole host of social behaviors, learning, communication. It's a laundry list of important, sort of tasks that most animals have to solve, or must be successful at in order to survive and reproduce. Now, in the past, I've used textbooks for this class, and there are lots of them. There's probably a dozen different textbooks in animal behavior. But what I found is much more useful is to identify non-textbook materials that are magnitudes of order more engaging for students. It's, particularly for this kind of a class where, so much of it turns on, discussion and hearing from, other students and hearing from the instructors on different topics and, engaging with, different lectures from, on different videos, for example. So we have, for this class, we actually have 2 required texts. Both of them are sort of, I think they would classify as popular science. So one of them is, and I don't know if it's going to look like this for you guys, but it's called Climbing Mount Improbable by the biologist Richard Dawkins. It's a wonderful introduction to evolution by natural selection. I mean, the entire field of animal behavior is built on Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. And so, and again, since we are not assuming that you have, a solid grasp of this, we start there. And that's typically what I do. And in most introductory textbooks for animal behavior, the first few chapters are focused on evolution by natural selection to make sure that you understand the fact of evolution by natural selection. And I always say, it's not about, do you believe it? It's true. It's true as true as gravity is. And so I typically say, what part of what we're doing here with this first reading is to, get you as students to the point where you appreciate and you recognize the fact of evolution by natural selection. And so the second book, we'll spend the first, so if you look, I'm looking at the structure of the syllabus. We've broken it down into weeks, so there are 7 weeks of the course. We'll cover Dawkins in 4 weeks, and then we'll cover our second book, which is by the evolutionary anthropologist, evolutionary biologist Richard Wrangham. Richard Wrangham is in the Department of, I think it's evolutionary biology at Harvard. And his book is now available in paperback. Both these books you can get as ebooks or Kindle books, and that's perfectly fine. There isn't an updated edition of, this is a brand new book. It's called The Goodness Paradox. This came out in hardback, I think, in 2019 or 2018?
Was it that recent?
I think so. Let me just see. So it was originally in hardback. Oh, let's see here. Why can't I find it? There it is. Oh, 2019. So just last year. So this is a brand new book. It literally just came out in paperback. Do you have the hard copy?
Yeah, I have the copy you gave me.
Okay, fine. I was wondering where mine went. Yeah, I don't know what I did with that. Maybe I just had one. At any rate, it doesn't matter. It's the same book. You're all welcome to use. Everybody has their own preferences on how they want to do this. I've tried to read ebooks and Kindle books, and I just can't. It's too weird for me. That's me. So the only downside with the ebook, and we'll deal with this. So you guys, again, students, you're welcome to get the ebook or the Kindle book, whatever, an electronic form. We have to be careful when we refer to page numbers and stuff, because that's not how electronic books work. My experience, anyways, with Kindle, there aren't page numbers, or the page numbers don't match the actual pages of the book.
Right.
So we'll keep in mind when we're talking about the material. But it's the same chapter, it's the same text. You can get both books for, you can get them both used if you want to get paper copies for, $3 or $4. You can get them cheap, and they're both inexpensive. In part because they're not textbooks, and that was, again, by design. We didn't want to use a textbook. I've done it, and it's just it unnecessarily, makes the material less engaging than it needs to be. No, that's not what I meant. It makes the material far more boring than it really is. Textbooks, that is. So these books are super readable, super well written. They don't presume you have a huge amount of, background knowledge or any background knowledge, but, they're, they're appropriate for, a junior level college course. And I have absolutely no doubt that, students will be able to work your way through these books and, dare I say, even find them interesting and entertaining in places, in many places. So we'll spend the first 4 weeks working our way through Dawkins's book. And his book, really, the bottom line, what he's doing is he's trying to sort of set the stage and make sure that everybody understands, what evolution by natural selection is, how it operates, and what it produces as a consequence. Then what we do is we will shift to the goodness paradox, and the subtitle of Wrangham's book is The Strange Relationship Between Virtue and Violence in Human Evolution. So it'll be a slightly more focused sort of discussion for the second half of class, but I should note that books rely heavily on many, many different species, many different animals, the behavior of, we'll learn from Dawkins's book about, behaviors and, adaptations in ants and, I think tree frogs and flies and a variety of primates. And then in the goodness paradox, most of that focus will be on primates, not just humans, but you'll learn a lot about chimpanzees and bonobos, which are another species of chimpanzee. There's the common chimpanzee, and then there's the bonobos. And we'll learn about those species because, according to Wrangham's argument, they can tell us quite a lot about humans and about our own proclivities to or toward violence, as well as our proclivities toward virtue, including, for example, cooperation, altruism. So throughout the course, then, you'll see there'll be a strand of evolution by natural selection as the foundation for all of animal behavior. And then as we work through the course, we'll have an opportunity to discuss probably on the order of 3 or 4 dozen different species. The second half of the course will start to winnow the focus, narrow the focus, and we'll talk more about primates in particular, with the goal of getting a clear understanding of human psychology and behavior. Is there anything else you want to add about either one of those books, Gavin?
No. Honestly, well, I guess I should say that I have not read either of these, so I'll be on the same page as all of the students as far as that goes. So I hope that I'll be able to anticipate, because we'll be reading about a week ahead of you guys. So hopefully I'll be able to anticipate for each week of reading the kinds of problems that the students will have with the material and try and address them in these videos ahead of time. So,
yeah, excellent. And that reminds me that Gavin and I, there may be a couple of people in the current class that took the class with Gavin and I in our previous class, which just ended. We co-taught a course on evolution, science, and superstition. I thought it went very well. Students seemed to enjoy it. I think Gavin and I make a good team. And I think Gavin did, in fact, as he went through it, I can attest to the fact that he did predict a lot of the questions that would come up. And I think that's important, to sort of, we both do that. We both have to think in terms of how some of this material is sitting with you guys and try to sort of head off any problems before you actually get there. The other thing I'll mention is that I too although I've read both of these books and I've used them in previous classes, I'm actually rereading. So all over again, I'll start over. And so I'm rereading Climbing Mount Improbable, and I'm going to reread along with students and Gavin. So we'll all be rereading, we'll all be reading it together. I suppose I do have an advantage in that I've already read these books. And so I know where they're going. And, I'll do my best to take advantage of that, foresight. Looking at the syllabus then, you will see that there are, I'm going to let it's okay, Gavin, I think I'll let you guys read about expectations. This is just some boilerplate stuff that, you should read it, about makeup stuff, about special considerations. So I want to zip all the way to grade determination on the second page of the syllabus.
Okay.
So grades in this course, as we state on the syllabus, will be based on evaluations of the following materials. So basically, your grade is broken down into, I guess, 3 chunks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first one is online discussion questions and responses. Do you want to tell them a little bit about this, Gavin?
Yeah, for sure. So every week I'm going to post and there will be headings on the Moodle page for the course, week 1, week 2, week 3, etc. And then under each heading, I'm going to post a few different things. One of them will be a discussion forum. So there will be a discussion forum for each week, and it will be in that discussion forum where you will post your own submission to the discussion forum thread. And what we would like you to do for each time you post to one of those every week is to come up with 3 to 4 questions.
4 to 5, I think we say.
Oh, 4 to 5. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
4 to 5 questions that you have about the text, about the reading material for that week. For these, try to keep it focused on the reading material. You can incorporate in your discussion some stuff about the video lectures or the videos that we'll assign for the discussion or the reaction paper. But for the forum, just keep it to, I think, the text, right?
Yeah, I think generally that's a good idea.
Okay.
If the students are, it would be very strange if you didn't have any questions. It'd be strange because, for many of you, this is likely to be your first introduction to thinking from an evolutionary perspective. At any rate, 4 to 5 discussion questions. You'll post those, and those are due as you state here in the syllabus, as we state here, they're due by 9 a.m. each Saturday. Mm-hmm. So your first set of discussion questions, 4 to 5 discussion questions, you must post before 9 a.m. next Saturday, right? And also, you must respond to at least 2 other classmates, students, discussion questions. Okay, and Moodle is set up to basically keep track of how many questions you pose each week and how many students you respond to. Let me step back just a little bit. The discussion questions should be posted as questions, okay? You don't have to post the answers. The whole point is you're asking questions, and ideally, you will have 2 or 3 students, and occasionally Gavin or I might jump in, but it's an opportunity to sort of try to work through some issues you're having. You're confused about something, or you're concerned that you don't quite understand something, or you want to just bounce something off of somebody. And these are all reasonable things or issues to post questions about. So you just post your questions. You don't post the answers to your questions. These are questions that you actually have. That's, I think, the idea here. And then we'd like you to respond to at least 2 other students' questions. Okay?
Correct. For each week.
For each week. And that's due by 9 a.m. Saturday for each week. Right?
Yep.
Okay, and the thing is, that is worth these 2 components, posting discussion questions and posting responses to at least 2 other students' questions. That is 50% of your grade. And the way we're going to assess your questions and your responses is, do they appear to indicate that you're working through the material, you're struggling with the material, you're doing the reading? Okay, you're not going to be graded on whether or not your question is, whether you use correct spelling or grammar. None of that is relevant. And generally, people that post questions, it's clear that you're working through the material. Similarly with responses. And so most people, 99.9% of people who post discussion questions and post responses to at least 2 other students on time get full credit. Okay, so what that means is that if you keep up with posting the questions and posting responses, 50% of your grade, you nail it. That means you have a 100% rock solid A for 50% of your grade. At the risk of telling you something you probably, you should know, is that a good way to fail the class is to blow off the discussion questions or to blow off the responses, because you're going to, if you do both, then you're going to fail. But if we're asking you to stay engaged. That's what we're asking you to do. Stay engaged, keep up with the reading, post your discussion questions, post your responses to other students' questions. And in principle, you'll, as a byproduct, actually learn quite a lot about animal behavior. As will I, as will Gavin. That's sort of why we're all here. So that's 50% of your course grade, 200 of the 400 total points.
Yep.
The second major component is what we're calling brief reaction papers. Do you want to sort of tell them about brief reaction papers, Gavin?
Yeah, so here, as I mentioned a second ago, you can incorporate not just the reading material, but also we'll be posting several videos / podcasts every week that are supposed to go along with the weekly reading. So you can incorporate all of that weekly material into your reaction paper, which is supposed to be a 2-page double-spaced paper that you'll upload to the assignment submission link that'll be in every single week. 2 pages, double-spaced, like I said, with the first page being sort of a summary of the material, reading and video, and then the second page being like your reactions, your thoughts, your comments, ideally more than a summary, just sort of like expanding on the material, telling us sort of what you think about it, or any sort of thoughts you had. And also, please, ideally, these will be distinct from your discussion questions.
Sure.
So even if you have further questions or you want to elaborate on those questions, please don't just, sort of copy and paste your questions from the forum into the reaction paper, more or less. The reaction paper should be a place for you to expand on any thoughts or concerns you had on the material, if that makes sense.
Sometimes it can be useful to kind of zero in on a particular topic. Because every week we're going to cover a lot of material, and it might make sense. I think we'll be flexible, and if you want to focus on a particular topic that you want to write about, and summarize what you learned about it, and then again, the first page would be kind of a summary of the issues as you understand them. The second page would be your reactions, your concerns, your questions about that material. There is no regimented way to do it. This is really an opportunity for you as students to sort of another, sort of venue for struggling with the material and sort of reflecting on what you've, these lectures, these discussions that Gavin and I will post, but also the reading itself and the other assignments that we post, the other videos and lectures. We'll get to that in just a moment. And so that's, there'll be, each week, that will be due the reaction papers, 2 double-spaced pages. It's not a huge amount of space to cover. Do your best to keep it to 2 pages, about 2 pages. So if it's a little bit less, that's okay. If it's a little bit more, that's okay. Double-spaced, typed, and we've sort of given you some of the specifics there on the syllabus. And that's due every week, Saturday at 9 a.m., and it should cover the material that we covered during that week, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Once again, the way that we grade these is we do read them, and we ask ourselves, is it clear from reading your reaction paper that you read the material, that you watch the videos, and that you're engaging with the material. That you have reasonable questions. We're not assessing whether you appear to be an expert on the material. We're assessing whether you're engaging with it. This is it's 25% of your course grade. There'll be 7 of these, I think. Is that right? 7, because there's 7 weeks.
Yep.
I think 7. At any rate, because there's one due this Saturday, then the following. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. And once again, you'll get credit. Again, 99% of people, if you turn it in on time and you follow the minimal sort of requirements in terms of number of pages, double spaced, you get it in on time, you're going to get credit. Okay, you will get full credit for engaging with the material, even if it's clear that when we read these, if we sort of it's clear to us that maybe you're struggling to understand something, you still get full credit. Okay, for turning it in and for writing, for generating your thoughts and writing them down or typing them up and submitting them. So we're not grading for, necessarily for accuracy or for apparent expertise, but it's our way of, incentivizing staying engaged and continuing to work through the material and get stuff in on time. So there's 75% of your course grade now. You turn everything in on time. With very few exceptions, you'll have 100% for 75% of your course grade. Okay. Anything else you want to say about the brief reaction papers, Gavin?
No.
Okay. The final 25% of your grade will be a comprehensive exam, and this will be an essay exam. You will have 1 week to complete the exam. We will administer the exam we'll post the exam itself on August 12th, which is the Wednesday of week 7. I think that's a Wednesday, right? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, if it's the same as last semester, then it'll be the Wednesday of week 7, and then the exam will be due exactly 1 week from the minute we post it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think and that actually, so it'll be we'll post the exam on August 12th, and it'll be due. We'll talk more about the exam as it gets closer, but it'll be due. You must upload it by August 19th by a particular time, and we'll give you the details once we get there. But it will be an all essay exam, and the basically what we envision is probably 4 questions, probably 2 coming from Dawkins's book and 2 coming from Wrangham's book. These will be incredibly broad questions that will give you a lot of opportunity to craft your answer in a way that takes advantage of the material that you're most comfortable with, that you feel most comfortable writing about. But again, there isn't a single right answer. As a matter of fact, ideally we'll get, I think there are 19 students enrolled in the class, we'll get 19 different but equally defensibly good answers. Mm-hmm. That's been my experience teaching this class and other courses. Oakland, I typically use this sort of strategy for final exams. And that way you have all your material in front of you. You can go back and rewatch videos, everything we do in the class. These lectures, I don't really call these lectures, but these discussions between Gavin and fair game for material in your exam. Of course, the books themselves are you can use material from the books. You can use material from the lectures that we post, from other podcasts. All of it is fair game. And Gavin and I will be happy to review drafts of your responses, so you can work on them and send them to us, and then we can review them, knowing that we're the ones grading them, and we can say, well, it looks like you've nailed question 1, so let go of that. Question 2, we're having a little trouble here on this one. Can you expand on this issue, or whatever it is? The bottom line is you'll have a full week to do this, and I think we'll accept drafts up until, what did we do last time? Up until that Monday or something?
24 hours before the due date
fine.
Of the exam.
So we'll accept drafts of responses, all the way until 24 hours before the exam is due. I mean, the reality is that gives us time to, craft a sensible response or comments, and it gives you time to make revisions. So once we hit that 24-hour mark before the exam is due, we're not going to be fielding any further questions. So you just, bottom line is we got to draw the line somewhere. So once again, if you're willing to do the work, we're willing to do the work, and there's every reason to think that every single one of you can get a rock solid A in this class. I mean, typically the distribution of grades is in fact skewed towards A's. More people will get A's and B's than any other grade, but I feel compelled to tell you as students that there are a few students every single class that fail the class, but they fail it for a very simple reason. They don't keep up with the work, or they don't turn in their assignments, and then we have nothing to work with. I mean, there's nothing for it, but you end up with a 0, or you end up with a super low grade on a big chunk of the class. So at any rate, I'm sure that won't happen to any of the students in this class. Everybody will keep up, and really give Gavin and I an opportunity to do our jobs. I mean, we are here as resources to help you work through this material and to guide you through this material. We enjoy this material. So that's how your grade will be calculated. We also have the grading scale posted there, so there's no questions or there's no confusion. And then we've got a detailed class schedule. We've just got it by weeks. You can see week 1, which begins the week of June 29th. We'll cover, that's the first, I said preface. I think I put that in there. It turns out there's not a preface for non-beam mounted probable, and I'm sorry about that. So we'll cover typically 2 chapters a week as we work through Dawkins 2 for week 1. So you'll need to read chapters 1 and 2 for week 1. Watch this video or these videos that are posted, and then view the additional videos or lectures that Gavin will post each Monday when we post this lecture or this discussion. And that's how it'll roll for the next 7 weeks. If at any point, you have questions or concerns, please, I can only say it in so many different ways, but let me just say it in the most simple way I know. Please contact us. Please reach out to us. I mean, we can't help you if we don't know that you need help. We can't answer questions that we don't know that you have. Does that make sense? Yeah. Try us. We both enjoy what we do, and we look forward to hearing from everyone at some point. All right. Anything further, Gavin?
No, I think for the syllabus and introductions, that about covers it for me.
Okay. Let me say one thing about the supplementary material that we'll be posting. I mean, with an online class, basically, our discussions will typically run between 2 and 3 hours. What's nice is that you can watch these at your leisure. You can. It won't hurt our feelings if you want to put it on 1.5 speed, or you want to move us through, force us to speak faster than is natural. All good. But in principle, each course is going to require something on the order of 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours a week. It moves quickly. It does move quickly. I mean, this is a 7-week course that's typically covered in 14 weeks during a regular semester. So it's about 6 hours of course engagement per week. About 2 or 3 hours will be the lectures or discussions that Gavin and I post of ourselves. Then another 2, 3, occasionally 4 hours. Again, do it at your leisure. Do it as it's convenient for you during that week. It'll be lectures that are delivered, or a podcast with one of your authors, or sometimes a video series, like a docuseries that Dawkins has produced that aired, for example, in the BBC or aired in the United States on Discovery Channel. And you'll see that the first week we're assigning the first 3 episodes of a lecture series called Growing Up in the Universe that Dawkins delivered in the early 1990s that eventually became this book, Climbing Mount Improbable. And so I think it's a wonderful, it's super complementary to the book because it's not exactly the same material, but it's similar material shown in a very different forum. This is actually part of it's referred to as the Christmas lectures of the Royal Institute. These are publicized, sorry, these aired on public television in the United Kingdom. And the shtick is that these are delivered to children in the audience. So they're Christmas lectures for children. You will find that the material it's not dumbed down in any way, but there's a lot more sort of hands-on sort of experiments, and rather than just tell you about different types of dogs, he brings into the lecture theater, different dogs, a German Shepherd, different breeds. So it's much more sort of hands-on. I think it works very well. I find it super useful. I think this is one of the best sort of lecture series to get a handle on evolution by natural selection. So you'll see the first 3 episodes for week 1. Week 2, we'll ask you to watch the final 2 episodes, and then we'll move on to other series, docu-series. We'll talk about that later. Generally, I think what we'll try to do is talk about those lecture series or podcasts or interviews, whatever it is for that week. We'll talk a little bit about it when we post our discussion each week. Does that seem reasonable, Gavin?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, does that about do it then, Gavin?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna this will be the only time, obviously, that we spend on the syllabus and the course itself, but we think it's useful to sort of shave it away from the material for the week. And so this will be a separate video that you can watch, and there'll be a link to it that you'll find. It'll direct you to a YouTube, the YouTube platform to watch the video.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Thanks.